Good day, folks. I continue the small piece on China. The reason I do it is I'm pulling out all the op-eds that came out. I assume a lot of people don't read op-eds, and on the front pages and otherwise, it's whole debate seems to have disappeared. Could be many reasons. Today, Prashant Jha gives his reasons that maybe the government doesn't want to kind of compromises its strategy, but I don't think that's the reason why the government is unwilling to discuss it, because this has happened. We've had big wars, Mr. Prashant Jha, and I don't think Indira Gandhi always took everybody into confidence during the 1971 war. Nehru took everybody in confidence during the 1962 war. So that kind of is to us reasonable hogwash, the article today, but I give him his due. He has a viewpoint. And just let's say, border tension after Indian-Chinese soldiers clash at Tawang is where it started it all off. United States has seen the depth and the danger in South China Sea, and under Obama, the reason why China kept upping the ante is because Obama decided to leave that South China Sea as the backyard of China, and made the biggest error, I think, in this growth of Xi and China. US pledges support to India over China border clashes came out right through, and also something similar with Germany. LAC clash a matter of concern, says German envoy. So while the Germans have been trying to balance because of reasons of commerce, especially big car makers, etc., wanting the Chinese market, they are finally beginning to understand this, right? Is the Tawang clash a PLA message for India? Is the Shishir Gupta important read, right? The fisticuffs between responding Indian army soldiers and intruding PLA troops in the Tawang sector in Arunachal Pradesh on December 9th, and additional forces deployment and military activity across the LAC are clear indication that Xi Jinping regime will continue to put pressure on both contested sectors of the borders and has little interest in normalizing relations with India. The other sector, of course, is Ladakh, one where a standoff continues for the 20th month. Okay, then you have this. Just as China wants to impose the 1959 cartographic line in the on the 1597 km East Ladakh LAC. It covers all of Arunachal Pradesh, which it terms South Tibet, and contests the 1126 km LAC in the eastern sector. You got to remember this, right? China has also renewed military activity in the Indian-China-Bhutan tri-junction area near the Doklam Plateau, where the standoff was earlier. There is a school of thought that New Delhi may have pushed Beijing too far with its growing closeness to Washington and the energy with which it has embarked on its G20 presidency. The argument underestimates China play. The country, well on its way to becoming a superpower to rival the US next decade, is in a rush to ensure its military objectives in the western and eastern sectors are achieved before that. In this context, it makes sense for India to continue to focus on what it needs to do without worrying about Beijing's reaction. Absolutely true. China continuing infra work on India border, weighing bases in Pakistan, says US. Then you had the cyber attack. So they're doing it from all fronts. AIMS attack probe points to China hackers. AIMS cyber attack traced to China. Patient data restored. Even as border chill deepens, record surge in imports from China. That's a whole bunch of problems. US to China drill with India. None of your business. This is what happened in Uttarakhand. And a lot of people are saying this is just to teach us a lesson, or trying to tell us that if we continue along this route, they're going to up the ante. We should make them pay. India-US military exercise, none of China's business, says US CDA. Delhi dismisses Beijing's objection, says haven't given veto to any third country. Absolutely right. Pentagon, China warned US not to interfere in India ties. Like I said, it's kind of hogwash. China warned US not to interfere with India ties, Pentagon report. That's kind of funny. But what you got to do is understand this. The Tawang clash is a wake-up call. Don't let China off the hook, says Sham Saran. While neither side wants to initiate aggressive operations on the border, India being reactive to a combative China may not be the best strategy to counter the hostile neighbor, much like it earlier did in both Doklam and South Pangong. So, India needs a bolder approach that takes advantage of the terrain to ensure no more incursion. That's important, right? China is engaging in a form of coercive diplomacy, engaging Indian border troops in low-intensity clashes without intending to spark a shooting war. But you have to threaten that, right? But the Chinese do have the capacity to initiate aggressive operations across the border. India is mostly reactive, and it is a matter of debate whether this is the best strategy to keep the border relatively peaceful, right? And he's also been a foreign secretary and also ambassador to the United States, if I'm not mistaken. On the military side, a bolder strategy should be to take advantage of a very variable mountainous terrain along the border, which offers several favorable points for swift ingress from the Indian side in response to China's incursions. Finally, the Indian lexicon should drop the constant references to differences in perception to explain why clashes may have taken place in certain areas. The Chinese do not use such terms. Their current approach is not to clarify the line of actual control so they can say whatever they want it to be. We are clear where the LAC lies, so why say that there may be differences in perception, which weakens our position and lets the Chinese off the hook. This is the most important part. And pain and gain. Deterring China requires us to change Xi's cost-benefit calculation, says Nitin Pai. He says, what about the near term? The first task in changing Beijing's calculation is for New Delhi to act differently and become more unpredictable. The army must continue its front-footed approach in countering the PLA's transgressions. However, the political and diplomatic establishment should not be eager to achieve a mutual de-escalation as it has been. Instead, the army and the Indian Air Force should be deployed in a manner that signals the nation is prepared for long-drawn military tensions along the Himalayan frontier. This is for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, right? The Modi government's refusal to be part of Xi Jinping's Belt and Road Summit is a good example of how this works. Without India, the Belt and BRI has become $1 trillion boondoggle of unsustainable projects and debts. India should stop supporting China's grand geopolitical initiatives, be it the Shanghai Cooperation, BRICS, AIIP, and so on. The third task is to unapologetically be a part of a countervailing coalition against China. I have long argued that this is the real big consequential game. The more India demonstrates capability and willingness to project power in East Asian waters, the more we will be able to dissuade China along the LAC and in our immediate neighborhood. Unless it feels the pain, China will be tempted to raise the tempo of transgressions in the coming years. New Delhi must deliver the pain in stronger doses until Beijing comes around. And that, folks, is what is important. You have to deliver in punches. You cannot keep succumbing as the external affairs minister has done to try and create a peaceful bond. And you cannot keep saying that you agree with China on the LAC. You just cannot. Jai Hind.